I found the message on my girlfriend's phone by accident. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize, asking a simple question. If you didn't have a boyfriend right now, would we get back together? Her reply was just one word. Yes. I stared at the screen for a moment, feeling a cold knot form in my stomach. Then I showed her the chat. I asked her, calmly, to delete the guy's number. She didn't apologize. Instead, she got impatient and questioned why I was making a big deal out of it. She told me he was just her first love, and they were only talking about the good old days. She asked me if that wasn't okay, acting like I was the crazy one. She probably thought I would just roll over and spoil her like I always did, willingly acting like a doormat to keep the peace. She didn't realize how serious I was until the next day, when she found out I had moved out of our apartment and blocked her number. She panicked. About a week before this, that guy, Brad, had gotten drunk and called her, so Sarah left me in a hurry to go take care of him. The problem was, that day was my scheduled surgery. I waited at the hospital, anxious and in pain, hoping she would show up just to give me a little encouragement before I went under. When I finally managed to reach her on the phone, I heard her yelling angrily on the other end. She screamed that Brad was drunk, and she was worried about his safety. She told me not to call her if it wasn't important. And then the line went dead. She was so worried about her childhood friend being drunk that she didn't stop to think about how much I needed her to just wish me luck before my operation. When I came out of the operating room, my whole body felt numb, like the anesthesia hadn't worn off yet. I looked around the empty hospital room, then at the empty inbox and call log on my phone. I felt emotionally numb, too. I never used to hold grudges against Sarah. No matter how she treated me, I always listened to her, acting like we were in the honeymoon phase of dating even after all this time. But this time was different. I felt tired. After I was discharged, I went to stay at a friend's house instead of going back to the apartment I shared with Sarah. She eventually tracked me down at my friend's place. She brought some fruit I liked and 2 movie tickets. She rarely gave me a way to back down during an argument. Usually, even if I was the one who was upset, I had to calm myself down first and then go apologize to her, regardless of whose fault it was. Our relationship had been like that from the very beginning. At parties, my friends would joke that I was a hopeless romantic fool, but I always thought that if I cherished Sarah enough, she would eventually understand and appreciate how sincere I was. But even when she came to make up with me that day, she did it with her nose in the air. She asked if this was all a grown man could handle, asking if the surgery wasn't successful, and why I couldn't just let it go, like before. That's when I realized Sarah probably always understood my sincerity. She knew I loved her, she just treated it as something insignificant, so she didn't value it. On the day of my surgery, right before the anesthesia kicked in, I had been thinking about our 3 years together. As I lost consciousness, Sarah's cruel words echoed in my head again. Don't call me if it's nothing. I finally realized that compared to Brad, I could be thrown away at any moment. Even on the day of my surgery, when I was at my most vulnerable and needed support, and even though she knew I planned to propose after the surgery to mark a new chapter for us, she still left me for him. I lost count of how many times things like this happened after Brad came back into our lives. She only cared if Brad was happy. If he got drunk, it was a massive crisis for Sarah, but she mocked me for not being manly enough when I simply wanted company for a medical procedure. I eventually went back to the apartment with Sarah. I had a lot of work to catch up on, and my laptop was there. Once we got home, I locked myself in the study to try and get through days of missed work, until Sarah knocked on the door. She asked if I remembered saying I had something important to do, after the surgery. I was going to propose, and she knew it because I had taken her to pick out the ring weeks before. That ring was big and bright, just dazzling. I thought it looked good on her, but Sarah had complained that I was too predictable. I always wanted to make sure gifts fit her taste before I gave them to her, but apparently that could never compete with the surprises Brad gave her. Inside the study, I didn't say anything. Sarah continued, saying that if I didn't speak up, she would unlock the door and come in. She said that after the proposal, we should go visit my parents. I agreed, but I did it reluctantly. If this had been the past, I would have been overjoyed that Sarah cared so much about my proposal, but this time, I felt a weird sense of resistance I couldn't explain. Sarah asked me to book a table at her favorite restaurant. We agreed to meet there after work, but I waited until closing time and Sarah never showed up. I worried about her safety and called her several times, but the line was busy. Eventually, I gave up and went back to the apartment. Through the door, I heard Sarah singing. Her voice was soft and gentle. Sarah's singing was the thing that first attracted me to her, but once we started dating, she never sang for me, even when I asked her to. I opened the door and asked her about it, reminding her that she used to sing that specific song for me. She was on the phone with Brad. On the other end of the line, I heard Brad's voice, and a notification popped up on her screen showing that Brad had tweeted. He wrote, "Grateful for your voice still being around, and you too." And he attached a video of Sarah singing. I saw the post right at midnight. Suddenly, the fireworks I had arranged for Sarah exploded outside the window. With a loud pop, the sky filled with bright colors. It was spectacular. Sarah excitedly talked into her phone, telling Brad there were beautiful fireworks and that she wanted to show him on video. As the fireworks faded away, my heart turned cold. All my feelings disappeared along with the lights in the sky. Late that night, Sarah knocked on the study door. I didn't want to open it, but she kept knocking, so I reluctantly let her in. Sarah's eyes were a little red, like she had been crying. She stepped inside quickly, wanting to hug me, but I instinctively moved away. Sarah got a bit irritated and asked me what was wrong. Her phone was still lit up in her hand, displaying a chat with a close-up photo of her and Brad as the background. I had once begged her to change that photo, but she argued that I was being overly sensitive about her past, which led to a huge fight. After that, I never dared to bring it up again. I thought if I helped her slowly get over that relationship, she would eventually fall in love with me. I thought everything would pass, but it had been 3 years. I told her I was honestly a bit exhausted. I couldn't seem to warm her heart. She told me Brad was having some financial trouble and asked if I could help him out. Seeing me stay silent, Sarah came over and took my hand. Her tone softened a lot, reminding me that he was an old classmate of ours. I almost laughed. I wouldn't even look at her. I asked her if she realized she had canceled on me on the night I was going to propose, just to appease her first love and sing for him. I asked her if, after being all lovey-dovey and reminiscing about old times with him, she really expected me to help him too, like I was some kind of tool. After hearing what I said, Sarah was unapologetic, as always. She said he called her saying he was in trouble, and she couldn't just turn him away. I waved my phone around and asked how, if he was in such a financial emergency, he had the energy to tweet just to remind me he existed. I told Sarah I was really tired and had work the next day. I pushed her out of the door, despite her accusing me of being heartless. To prove her point, Sarah moved back to her own place, taking a lot of her stuff, but leaving Buster behind. Buster was Sarah's dog, but over time he had basically become my dog. If he got sick, I was the one rushing him to the vet in the middle of the night. I was the one caring for his daily needs. When I used to cuddle with Sarah and the dog, I'd happily think about how nice life was with just the two of us, and a dog, even if it was tiring. After Sarah moved out, I patted Buster on the head, and he didn't seem too bothered by her absence. It was no wonder, since taking care of him was always my responsibility anyway. Just as I thought things were calming down, Brad showed up. He told me that as a man, he didn't think I should treat Sarah that way. I almost laughed, out loud. He said her name so familiarly, you'd think they were a couple. I told him how I treat Sarah was none of his business, especially since I had given her all my heart. I started to close the door, but Brad stopped me. He said if I didn't treat Sarah well, he wouldn't mind taking her back. His words were full of provocation. I shot back that he couldn't help but covet things that belonged to other people. As I expected, it wasn't long before Sarah texted me saying she wanted to break up, and Brad also sent a taunting message saying she wasn't mine anymore. I shut off my phone, feeling overwhelmed by the noise. The last breakup with Sarah was still vivid in my memory. It started because I lost a hand-knit bag of hers. I had bought Sarah countless designer bags, but she cherished that one the most. After losing it, she had a huge fight with me and heartlessly broke up. I thought she had made it herself, giving it special meaning, so I spent several sleepless nights making an identical one for her. Mine was more detailed and well-crafted, much better than the crude original. When I showed her the bag I made, she looked like she had seen the funniest joke ever and stomped on it. She told me not to be pathetic, saying no matter how well I made it, it wasn't the same as that bag. She mocked me cruelly, and I just quietly took it. Later, I found out the bag was from Brad, which is why she treasured it so much. I realized that no matter how many expensive bags I gave her, or how well made they were, it didn't matter. Why was I degrading myself like this? After Sarah moved out, I felt a peace in my heart I'd never known. It was like my heart was still under the anesthesia from that surgery, unable to wake up. Sarah posted about food, and Brad posted about her silhouette on Twitter. They played their little games online like it was the most fun thing in the world. The only feeling I had was that something was slowly peeling away from my heart, bit by bit. It was painful, but it left me with a sense of relief I hadn't felt before. That lasted until Sarah's mom came over with her. Sarah didn't look happy. She must have been forced to come by her mom. Brad tagged along, probably just following Sarah around. Even though Sarah and I had our issues, I had no reason to be disrespectful to elders, so I respectfully invited them in. I gave Brad a dirty look as he entered uninvited without any good reason. Sarah wasn't pleased, telling me she was also a host there, and she invited him. I paused. Even in front of her parents, who knew about our relationship, she didn't hide her defense of Brad. During dinner, considering Sarah's mom's taste, I made some spicy dishes. When I served the food, Sarah thoughtfully got a bowl of water for Brad to rinse his food in, which reminded me that Brad couldn't handle spicy food. It also reminded me of when Sarah used to mock me for being a big guy who couldn't handle spice. To accommodate her taste, I forced myself to eat spicy food, hurting my stomach in the process. But true love doesn't require you to change yourself. Brad could choose not to eat spicy food, and Sarah would naturally prepare a bowl of water for him. But when I needed to avoid spicy food after my surgery, she never took it seriously. It turned out my efforts were just a joke. Brad smiled, pulled the bowl of water towards himself, and pointedly said to me that Sarah had always been so considerate. Indeed, she was, just not towards me. I knew Brad was trying to provoke me by saying that, but I didn't care anymore. After the meal, Sarah's mom insisted she stay. Sarah's mom saw promise in us, so after each argument she'd play peacemaker, and Sarah would go along with it. It was a familiar routine. After her mom left, I went to feed Buster as usual, But when I opened the door, Buster bolted out like a shot. On the sofa, Sarah and Brad were laughing about something, but they were clearly disrupted by Buster's sudden appearance. Sensing the unfamiliar and threatening vibe, Buster growled at Brad. Brad laughed, pointing at Buster, asking if this was my dog. His laugh carried a hint of mockery, saying a dog like him was just like his owner, pushing everyone away. But before he could finish enjoying his own joke, my words were barely out when Buster lunged straight at him, leaving a scratch on his hand. As Brad yelped in pain, I was cheering Buster on in my heart. But then Buster yelped. It was because Sarah kicked him hard with the high heels I'd recently bought her. I quickly ran forward to protect Buster. He was terrified, hiding under my feet, shaking all over. His eyes were filled with tears, and there was a look of unspeakable betrayal in his gaze. I understood he wasn't trembling just because he got kicked. He was hurt because the person who did it was Sarah, his once beloved owner. My heart ached like hell. Sarah looked at me coldly and asked why I was protecting it when it bit people. She looked like she wanted to devour me and Buster. In some ways, I felt I was just like Buster. At least with the whole Brad thing, we were both the ones cast aside. Sarah turned away, her expression changing to one of sympathy as she lifted Brad's sleeve to check his scratch. I held back my anger, picked Buster up, and headed for the door. But Sarah just wouldn't quit following us. She muttered that I should give the dog away sooner. It felt like a cold bucket of water splashed over me, the true meaning of despair. Covering Buster's ears, I turned back and yelled at Sarah that it was enough. Maybe it was because I had never been so stern with her before, but Sarah looked at me like she couldn't believe it. Ignoring her gaze, I carried Buster out without looking back. I took him to the vet. Thankfully, the doctor said he was just shocked, and nothing serious. On the way back, Buster kept nuzzling his head against my face. Sensing something, I tried to smile at him several times, but couldn't. My mind was filled with flashes of memories between Sarah and me. I told myself she wasn't worth it, and there was no point holding on anymore. When I got home, Brad was gone, and Sarah was in the corner of the living room without any shoes. She ran over when she saw me, trying to take Buster into her arms. As soon as Booster saw her, he snuggled deeper into me, avoiding her. I didn't have the strength to deal with her. I kicked off my shoes and headed inside. Sarah called out to me, saying I never treated her like this before. I chuckled without turning back and said, "But you've always treated me like this." Once in my study, I opened my phone. A few real estate ads popped up, which was quite timely. After the operation, I had started looking at houses near my workplace. I hadn't made a move, waiting to see if Sarah would completely let me down. Now, all I wanted was to escape the little home I once cherished with her. This time, either my resolve was different, or Sarah couldn't stand it anymore. She walked into the study and lay next to me. Just as she tried to put her arm around me, I turned away. Her phone lit up with a message from Brad saying, "I miss you." That photo still hadn't changed. It used to feel like 1,000 needles stabbing me, but now it just seemed ironic. I grabbed her phone, opened the thread, and scrolled up to see just how far this had gone. It was casual chats, but the eagerness to share was obvious. Brad was everywhere in Sarah's life. I had just blinded myself to it. Scrolling further, I found a heart-wrenching text. "If you didn't have a boyfriend, could we get back together?" It was shameless and disgusting. Sarah's short reply stunned me. "Yes." That message was sent just before Sarah told me about breaking up. She seemed guilty reaching for her phone but kept her cool, asking me not to fight. I sneered and showed her the chat, telling her to delete him then. Caught, Sarah impatiently questioned me, saying he was just her first love, and they were reminiscing, asking what was wrong with that. I agreed with her. I said, if it was so wonderful, why reminisce unless she wanted it back? I told her if it was so great, she should leave me out of it. I moved out with Buster swiftly, finding a place in the city. We used to live far from downtown because I wanted Sarah to get more sleep since her workplace was in an out-of-the-way area. Now I didn't have to drive 2 hours to and from work. I tiredly revised proposals after a long day, but it felt fantastic. I blocked Sarah everywhere. Before, she used to block me. I wondered how she'd feel now seeing the red exclamation marks, but I couldn't care less. Work was crazy busy with a huge project keeping me occupied. Then one weekend, Sarah's friend called, saying something serious happened at her home, and she wanted to see me. I didn't entirely believe it, but I knew we had to meet again to end this, to root out this 3-year relationship for good. When I arrived, Sarah was cooking. I never let her do that when we were together. She looked worn out, her swollen eyes revealing she had cried hard. Sarah told me her dad got framed for fraud and jailed, and her mom fell ill and ended up in the hospital. Listening to all that, my heart weighed heavy. Ending things wasn't simple anymore. I used connections to get the best lawyer and accompanied Sarah to see her mom in the hospital. For a month, it was back and forth between court and the hospital. Surprisingly, Brad was nowhere to be seen during all of this. He only showed up on the day they released Sarah's dad. From a distance, I couldn't hear what they said, but Sarah was upset, likely blaming him. She had never argued with Brad before. This was the first time. But I just stood there, holding a cup of coffee, watching quietly from a distance. It had nothing to do with me anymore. After they finished talking, Brad left. Sarah came over to me, her eyes a bit red. After gathering herself for a while, she finally spoke and said she was sorry. Those 3 words were so light, they barely took any effort to say, but I had endured immense pain over those days. My heart had been cut open, shattered, smoothed, and finally put back together. That "I'm sorry" was the last thing I needed. I took Sarah home. As I was about to leave, she suddenly rushed over and hugged me. She wanted me to bring Buster back. Her tone was pleading, as humble as I once was. But I couldn't let her be like I used to be, because I knew how unbearable it felt. I calmed Sarah down and promised that she could ask me for help in the future if she ever needed it. But her tears wouldn't stop, so I went to the room to find some tissues for her. Walking into the study, I was a little stunned. It was no longer arranged as it used to be. The succulents I kept on the windowsill were gone, replaced by basketball-themed curtains. The whole room was filled with a men's cologne I didn't recognize. There was a pair of leather shoes by the bookcase. I recognized them as Brad's. He had shown them off on Twitter. They were a birthday gift Sarah picked out specifically for him. I was only surprised for a moment, and then grabbed the tissues from the desk. I should have seen it coming. Sarah appeared behind me, softly calling my name, seeming a little flustered and trying to explain. She asked if she hadn't told me Brad had a financial crisis while I was away, implying she let him stay there because I wasn't using the study. I turned around, handed her the tissues, but her tears had already dried. I told her to make sure Brad sent me the rent, and I left without looking back. Sarah began showing up outside my office building more frequently. She would bring packed lunches to my desk during lunchtime and wait at the office entrance for me after work. The lunches were filled with authentic, spicy dishes. I refused several times, but she persisted. One day, while getting coffee, I overheard colleagues whispering. They said it was funny that they'd worked with me for so long and this was the first time they'd seen my girlfriend. They mentioned they'd only ever seen me post about her on Twitter but never seen her come to the office before. I stepped in to correct them, saying she wasn't my girlfriend anymore. I used to visit Sarah's office, too, driving over to have lunch with her and picking her up with flowers at the end of the day. I thought girls liked that, but Sarah thought I was too clingy, that I didn't give her enough personal space, and told me not to show up at her workplace anymore. Yet, it wasn't until one day I realized that she didn't want me to pick her up because Brad was there. I used to be insanely jealous, but Sarah just said Brad didn't suffocate her like I did. Thinking of these things, I wanted to laugh. She always dressed up the concept of boundaries as something righteous, even justified. Another night after work, it began to rain heavily. I submitted the project for the boss to review and prepared to leave. A female colleague asked if I minded walking with her since she didn't have an umbrella. I knew her. She was quiet and worked in the marketing department. In the past, I would have worried about Sarah overthinking it, but now I just saw it as helping someone out. I agreed, and we walked side by side. As we stepped out the company door, I saw Sarah waiting there. She looked a bit displeased, with a hint of questioning in her expression, but still approached. She told me she had her car and could drive me home. I waved the umbrella in my hand and said, no need. Besides, I had promised someone else. When I got home, Sarah texted me. She said she finally understood how I felt back then. I didn't reply. She wouldn't understand. Her feelings weren't even a fraction of mine. Life went on as usual. Sarah continued doing the same things, making lunches, waiting for me after work. She even took an interest in Buster, which was rare. She asked what brand of dog food Buster liked, bought various toys, and volunteered to take him for walks. Turns out she could do all these things. What were those past days about then? In front of Brad, she ignored me and Buster. I never imagined that one day my status with Sarah would flip, but facing her enthusiasm, I couldn't muster the energy to engage. Finally, on a rainy evening, she showed up at my door in a seductive dress, soaking wet, seemingly drunk, and started recounting endless thoughts of missing me. That's when I realized this needed to end. Fearing she'd catch a cold, I let her in, gave her a towel, and made ginger tea for her. I hoped when this relationship ended, we'd both leave it with some grace. Sarah half lay on the sofa and asked if I still cared about her. Her eyes lingered on me with an emotion I couldn't describe. I couldn't meet her gaze. I knew what caring felt like. It was those restless nights filled with uncertainty. It was being so sensitive that her every move tugged at my heart. It was being covered in scars, yet still choosing to give. But it wasn't this feeling now. Before I could speak, Sarah's phone lit up. I accidentally glanced over as it buzzed incessantly. It was the same old screen. Brad and Sarah's photo together, Sarah's smile bright and joyful. I put on a smile, signaling for her to answer, telling her it looked like she should deal with her things first. That night, I insisted on driving Sarah back home. After dealing with all my work matters at the company, I took a break to avoid seeing Sarah again. But she remained persistent. She texted, called, and even reached out to my friends. Eventually, she even contacted my family. I had talked about Sarah countless times to my parents, praising her in every way to leave a good impression. They wanted to meet my girlfriend, but Sarah never agreed. I once begged her to meet my parents, but she always said she didn't have time and to wait a little longer. That wait stretched to 2 years. I later realized she simply didn't want to meet them. She had time to hang out with Brad under the guise of friendship, and time to go to baseball games he liked, but never time to visit my parents with me. When my parents arrived, Sarah was with them, looking pleased. It seemed they were charmed by her. When I walked in, My parents had smiles plastered on their faces. During dinner, Sarah kept up the image of the perfect girlfriend. She placed food on my plate and casually shared all my little habits, making my parents laugh with her jokes. Only I knew how much I'd longed for this scene, but now it just scared me. After dinner, I pulled Sarah into a room. I told her dinner was done, and she should leave and not contact my parents again. Sarah looked shocked, then got really upset. She probably didn't expect me to be this cold. She exclaimed that I was shutting her out just because of what happened with Brad. She asked if I wasn't understanding before, reminding me that I used to tolerate her. As soon as she said it, she realized her mistake and stopped talking. But in my mind, I could hear the rest of her thought. Why can't you keep tolerating me now? Why can't you keep watching as I lean toward Brad and still spoil me? Why can't you keep watching me reminisce about my first love, get jealous for me, lose your mind over it? Why can't you hold on for a little longer? Turns out she knew all along. She wasn't oblivious to my tolerance, which is why she kept pushing my limits. She wasn't clueless about boundaries. She just thought I could handle her, so she kept hurting me. So when I was alone facing surgery, staring death in the face, she was with her drunk ex. Not a call all night. She could reminisce on those shameless good times right in front of me. With a loud slam, I pushed Sarah out and shut the door hard. Finally, the world felt quiet. In the days that followed, as I hoped, Sarah didn't disrupt my life anymore. But Brad started, messaging often, mostly about how Sarah was doing. Apparently, she locked herself up in our old apartment, refusing to see anyone, didn't eat or drink, and was looking worse by the day. One day Brad called, and I heard Sarah's faint voice on the other side asking if she could see me one last time. Panic hit me. I was worried she might do something drastic. I rushed to where Brad said she was. When I arrived, I realized it was the park where Sarah and I had our first date. This was where I sincerely confessed to her, saying I'd love and protect her forever. But after everything, the once poorly kept park had been refurbished, replaced by towering buildings. The old run-down playground equipment lay abandoned, full of holes, just like the state of my feelings for Sarah. Sarah seemed to have aged overnight. Seeing her condition, I knew Brad hadn't been lying. But there was no pity, only guilt and helplessness. She forced a smile and asked if I remembered this place. Of course I remembered, but it wasn't worth reminiscing about, was it? Staring at her expectant eyes, that was all I could think to say. She nodded, disappointed. Brad grabbed my collar, eyes fierce and teeth clenched. He asked how I could treat her like this and told me to look at her. In response, I punched him hard. I told him I was done with him. It felt good, a relief long overdue. The truth is, I always knew about Brad and Sarah's past. We were classmates. I watched them fall in love in college only to separate post-graduation due to a long-distance relationship that didn't work. After we graduated, I thought Sarah and I would be like countless college friends, drift apart and never cross paths like parallel lines. Until we unexpectedly met again in this city. We began connecting again, starting as friends. She'd argue with him, I'd be there for her. They'd reconcile, I'd be happy for her. Then she went through a breakup. On a pouring, stormy night, she cried until she couldn't breathe. That's when I found she'd already taken a place in my heart. I swore to help her get past this, to help her become better. In this city, we worked hard together, from having nothing to making progress. Only then did I confess my feelings. When I did, she giggled teasingly, saying she knew I liked her long ago. While we were together, we did all the regular couple things, dining, movies, walking around, and we were each other's shelter through the storms, moving forward together. We had many unforgettable moments. I thought we'd continue loving each other forever, until Brad came back into her life. Maybe Brad's job relocation had him here, or maybe he couldn't let go of Sarah and came to this city for her. After he returned, things in our relationship started going downhill fast, like riding a slide. But was letting go of Brad really so hard for Sarah? I guess not really. She was used to enjoying my love, while still shamelessly reminiscing about the good old days. Being let down. Time and again left me feeling pretty low about Sarah, so I was done. Since the big deal from last time went through, I got recognition from the boss. He wanted to promote me to the company's main office that's in a big city. I had a similar chance before, but I turned it down flat. I just couldn't bear the thought of putting Sarah through the whole long-distance thing again, even though I knew I'd handle it way better than Brad ever did. Still, I couldn't bring myself to do it. Any piece of Sarah that was broken, I was willing to help put back together. Every bitter and sweet moment she went through, I was ready to cherish. So I never let Sarah in on this. But somehow the opportunity circled back to me, and I had no good reason to stay in the city anymore. This time I didn't tell Sarah. There was no need to anymore. But before I left, Sarah came to see me. She brought 2 rings. With a bit of surprise on my face, she handed me the bigger ring and asked if she could propose to me. That one sentence made me realize that maybe Sarah always knew how I felt. She knew, but my love was just dust in her eyes, something she didn't value. She said after this, she wouldn't bother me anymore. I found that pretty funny. Twice I wanted to propose to her, but both times she walked away. Once she left me on a cold operating table, and once surrounded by fireworks I'd set for her. Twice I was forgotten on the road we were supposed to travel to happiness. I shook my head. Sarah suddenly burst into tears. Seeing her sobbing like that, I didn't even feel sorry because I remembered how I'd always held back before. I never shed a tear in front of Sarah, no matter how hurt or troubled I felt. It was all bottled up inside, never passing on bad vibes to her. But being that restrained only got me treated even worse. It's those past moments of myself that deserve sympathy. I told Sarah to let's part on good terms. This time it was really over. I moved to another city. My career took off, and I got to see a much bigger world than I ever thought of before. Every so often I'd hear about Brad and Sarah from some college buddies. Brad went bust and hit rock bottom. Before, he'd loved posting cryptic stuff online to needle me, but now he's vanished. I figure life ground him down. I also found out Sarah's dating someone new, a guy her family set her up with. I was surprised to hear that. When she was with me, she clung to memories of Brad, yet after we split, they didn't get back together. Maybe that's how people are, right? We crave what we can't have. On a calm afternoon, I stood in the tallest office building, sipping my coffee, looking down at the city. A message from Sarah popped up. She wrote, "I'm getting married. Can we meet one last time?" She said, "Mark, I hope you can come." I opened my friends list and hit block. Sarah couldn't shake her old habits, and I wasn't about to become Brad.
Going to your side of the compound. Or do they go down the... Oh no, they're on you. Oh. Got a new mission ready. Huh?
Still fighting on Seal. Nice. On custom. Ow. I die here.
On the redeploy.
I die. And I get instant thirsted. That's fantastic.
Wow.
Had fun though. Thanks for bringing me in. Yeah, for sure.
I'm down on the green zone.
I know we were just teasing about like the owing you a game or whatever, but it really wasn't.
He's right there, man.
Really wasn't a problem or anything. There are some people that like, you know, won't run with
Running up
people
in
they
the
don't
tower.
know or whatever, but like, they were like cool dudes.
Alright,
Those were
right.
homies.
I'm on HP. I'm plating real quick.
Had to get charity working? No, it ain't like that.
Top right? Well, they're literally like on the map.
Or it doesn't gotta be like that, you know.
Battlefield is still crawling with hostiles. Stay alert.
Good. Boys are being weird. Bruh. Pushing? Yep, I'm running up with them. On our left, Rod. In the open. 20, 60, 80. Dead.
Help.